I dive into a poem written by Ella Wheeler Wilcox, I would first like to acknowledge her accomplishments and the type of life she had. Ella was first born in Johnstown, Wisconsin in 1850 and later died in 1919 at the age of 69. During her life, Ella Wheeler Wilcox was an American poet and a journalist who was remembered most because of her unconventional poems and writings, which had erotic mentions, which at her time was a pretty big deal. She ended up writing many books with her erotic poetry, like Poems of Passion, Poems of Pleasure, Sweet Danger, and Men, Women, and Emotions. Because poems with sexual undertones had never really been written a lot before her, Ella became pretty well known. After the death of her husband Robert in 1916, she was so overcome with grief that she traveled to California to see a Rosicrucian astrologer. She later wrote, "I am the living witness, the dead live, and they speak through us and to us. And I am the voice that gives this glorious truth to the suffering world. I am ready, God. I am ready, Christ. I am ready, Robert." Ella even began to preach about the supernatural and the idea of reincarnation. Even after she passed away, Ella Wheeler Wilcox is still talked about today. One of her poems that I recently came across, called Solitude, is all about how in life people want to be around others who are happy and sugarcoat their lives, rather than people who are upset and show their true emotions from time to time. Solitude, by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Laugh, and the world laughs with you. Weep, and you weep alone. For the sad old earth must borrow its mirth, but has trouble enough of its own. Sing, and the hills will answer. Sigh, it is lost on the air. The echoes bound to a joyful sound, but shrink from voicing care. Rejoice, and men will seek you. Grieve, and they turn and go. They want full measure of all your pleasure, but they do not need your woe. Be glad, and your friends are many. Be sad, and you lose them all. There are none to decline your nectared wine, but alone you must drink life's gall. Feast, and your halls are crowded. Fast, and the world goes by. Succeed and give, and it helps you live, but no man can help you die. There's room in the halls of pleasure for a large and lordly train, but one by one we must all file on through the narrow aisles of pain. Now let's take a look at the first stanza. Ella constantly uses parallel ideas like laugh and weep and sing and sigh. By using parallels in her poem, Ella draws attention to the idea that if you are happy and laugh, others will want to be around you. But if you are sad and weep, you should do so by yourself. The writer then compares how someone who is upset, aka someone who is a saddled earth, must borrow its mirth, as in must borrow happiness and amusement, but has enough trouble alone that it doesn't need to borrow trouble or sadness from anything else. Then, once again, she goes on using parallel ideas to say how if you sing through life and are happy, the hills, or people, will answer you. But if you are sighing, your sighs will be lost on everyone around you, because people respond to happiness and shrink and disappear when someone is unhappy and trying to express their unhappy thoughts. It is also worth noting in this stanza that even though Ella Wilcox doesn't rhyme in every line, there are some instances where she rhymes with words like alone and own and air and care. Wilcox continues in the second stanza using parallelism yet again with words like rejoice and grieve, which are totally opposite, and glad and sad, which are also totally opposite. She even adds rhyme with words like measure and pleasure in the same line, and all and gall and go and woe. This stanza is just like the first and continues to state that people want to be around people who act happy rather than people who grieve and are mopey all the time. The writer then goes on to say that there are none to decline your nectared wine, as in no one will decline your riches and your happiness, but alone you must drink life's gall, as in alone you will have to go through the gross and unsweetened parts of life. Because gall is just another word for bile and like the parts of your gallbladder, which is oddly gross, but it does create a nice parallel thought between nectared wine, which is something normally thought as really sweet and tasteful, but gall is really gross and it's bile, and no one really wants to drink that. But again, this poet and author really pounds in the fact that no one really wants to be around someone who grieves and is upset and sad all the time because that's how you lose friends. Everyone would rather be around someone who rejoices in life and is happy and loves life. Okay, finally, for the third and final stanza, Ella Wheeler Wilcox uses once again parallelism and rhyming to draw attention to her lines of poetry. Ella uses parallelism with words like feast and fast, and rhymes with words like buy and die and train and pain. So in her first two lines, when she uses the parallel thoughts of feast and fast, she states that if you feast, as in if you take in life and enjoy every part of it, then you will be surrounded by people. But if you fast and don't enjoy it and don't eat everything, as in the total opposite of feasting, then you'll miss out on life and it'll just pass you by. She then goes on to write how if you do well in life and you give to others, you will live well, and maybe even giving will help you live. But no matter what you do and no matter who you help, no one can really help you die. And no matter the good deeds you do, that's not going to help you into your grave, because everyone at some point will go through the pleasures, yes, and there's plenty of space for that, but everyone must go through the painful parts in their life alone. They can't all file into this huge room. They must go down these narrow aisles solo and go through the painful parts in life. Throughout her poetry, Ella Wheeler Wilcox uses the parallelism to really draw attention to the point she is trying to make, which is people don't really want to be around others who are grieving and unhappy, but they want to be there when they're happy and sharing their successes. But in the end, people who are there for the happy times will all go through tough times too. And no matter who you have in your life, you must bear the painful parts of life alone.